Are we actually sitting here doing this? Yes. Again, I need every single person listening to my voice right now to understand the gravity of what we just witnessed. Losing a basketball game is one thing. In professional sports, losses happen all the time. You have bad shooting nights. The ball does not bounce your way. The opposing team catches fire and plays out of their minds. We can accept a loss. We can move forward. We can learn from it. But what we absolutely cannot and will not accept is what we just watched at that podium. This was not a press conference. This was a masterclass in deflection, delusion, and the complete absence of professional accountability. Stephanie White and Aaliyah Boston sat in front of cameras and insult the intelligence of every basketball fan who pays hard-earned money to watch this team play. What happened tonight was not just a loss. It was a revealing moment that exposed the toxic culture festering inside the Indiana Fever organization. And it's time we talked about it. Let me set the scene for you, because this is where everything started to unravel at that press conference. The Indiana Fever just lost a heartbreaking, tight game to Golden State. The final offensive possessions were an absolute disaster. Miscommunication, panic, confusion everywhere you looked. The basketball was bouncing around like nobody on that team had ever run a structured offensive set in their entire lives. A reporter steps up and asks Stephanie White what she thought about those final 2 shots of the game. This is a straightforward question. This is a moment where a real coach, an honest coach, would look into the camera and say, "We did not execute the way we needed to. We panicked under pressure. I need to draw up better plays. I need to prepare my team better for these moments." Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement. That's what accountability sounds like. That's what professional responsibility looks like. But this is Stephanie White we're talking about. And what comes out of her mouth is absolutely unhinged. She says she liked the looks. She thought they got good looks. What game was she watching? What footage was she reviewing? Because the rest of us watched something completely different unfold on that court. Let me break down that specific possession, because it's crucial to understanding just how delusional this situation has become. Caitlyn Clark is getting trapped and blitzed from every direction. The defense is collapsing on her like she's the only player who matters, which, let's be honest, she kind of is on that team. She manages to thread a pass inside to Aaliyah Boston. This is your franchise center. This is the player you gave a 4-year, $6 million contract to. This is supposed to be your dominant force in the paint. Boston catches the ball in a position where she should be unstoppable. She has a size advantage. She has a strength advantage. She has every physical tool necessary to make a decisive, fundamental post move toward the basket. Instead, something absolutely shocking happens. She completely panics. And I mean she completely loses her mind. She literally spins in circles like a top. She looks absolutely terrified of the moment. Her body language screams fear. Her footwork is non-existent. And then she just indiscriminately flings the basketball up toward the rim with zero confidence, zero technique, and zero chance of it going in. It was a broken possession. It was ugly. It was the kind of moment that should haunt a center for days, that should send them into the film room determined to work on their fundamentals. But here's where it gets truly infuriating. Stephanie White sits there at that podium with a completely straight face and tells the media, "I thought we got some good looks." Not just once. She says it multiple times. She defends those final possessions like they were well-executed offensive sets. It is pure delusion. It is a complete refusal to accept the reality of what actually happened on that court. It is a refusal to acknowledge that her offensive system is broken. It is a refusal to take responsibility for the fact that her team looked unprepared, unorganized, and panicked when the game was on the line. This is not a minor detail. This is not a small moment that we should just move past. This is the head coach of a professional basketball team defending possessions that were objectively terrible. This is the head coach saying, "Yes, I thought we got good looks," when the entire basketball world watched those possessions and thought, "What in the world was that?" It's gaslighting. It's insane. It's the kind of thing you'd expect from a coach in complete denial about their own incompetence. And here's what makes it even worse. Stephanie White is not some young, inexperienced coach learning on the job. She's been around professional basketball her entire life. She's worked at high levels. She's supposed to know better. She's supposed to understand that when your star point guard gets trapped and your center spins in circles, that's not a good look. That's a complete breakdown of offensive execution. That's a coaching failure. The fact that she sits there and defends these moments tells you everything you need to know about her approach to this job. She's not interested in fixing problems. She's not interested in honest self-assessment. She's interested in protecting her own image, in defending her own decisions, and in blaming literally everyone else for the team's failures. It's a toxic mentality. It's a loser's approach to professional sports. And most importantly, it filters down to her players. When your head coach refuses to take accountability, your players refuse to take accountability. When your head coach makes excuses, your players make excuses. And that's exactly what we're about to see. But if you thought that first moment was bad, if you thought that was the worst part of the entire press conference, I need you to brace yourself because what happened next is genuinely unbelievable. I'm talking about a moment that would get a head coach fired in any serious professional sports organization. A reporter asks Stephanie White a very specific tactical question. He's asking about number 4 on the Valkyries. He wants to know if White expected this particular player to play as much as she did in the second half. It's a reasonable question. It's the kind of question that shows the reporter is paying attention to the game, to the rotations, to who's actually impacting the outcome. But here's what happens. Stephanie White has absolutely no idea who the reporter is talking about. She looks completely lost. She doesn't know. She's drawing a blank. The reporter is asking about a player who is actively destroying the Fever's defense, a rotational player who is clearly impactful enough to warrant a tactical question, and the head coach doesn't know who they're talking about. And this is where it gets absolutely humiliating. Aaliyah Boston literally has to lean over. She looks at the stat sheet. She physically points her finger at the piece of paper to show her own head coach who number 4 is. Your star center has to educate your head coach about the opposing roster mid-press conference. Let that sink in for a moment. Stephanie White is the head coach of the Indiana Fever. Her entire job description, her entire responsibility, her entire purpose in that position is to watch film, to scout the opposing team, and to prepare her players for every possible scenario they might face. She's making a massive salary to do this. She's being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars annually to be an expert on basketball, on preparation, on knowing your opponent. And she does not even know the jersey numbers of the players actively destroying her defense on the court during the game. This is not a minor oversight. This is not a small detail that we can brush past. This is a fundamental failure of her job. How can you prepare your team for Golden State if you don't know who's on Golden State? How can you make defensive adjustments if you don't recognize the players you're supposed to be defending against? How can you scout your opponent if you don't even know their roster? It's genuinely embarrassing. It's the kind of thing that makes you question everything else she's supposed to be doing. Think about what this reveals about her preparation for this game. If she doesn't know who number 4 is, what else doesn't she know? Did she watch the game film? Did she study how Golden State's offense operates? Did she understand their tendencies? Did she know their strengths and weaknesses? Because it's clear that she did not invest the time necessary to truly understand the team she was about to face. She showed up unprepared. She showed up underprepared. She showed up like she was coaching a pickup game at the local gym, not a professional basketball matchup with championship implications. And here's the most infuriating part. She had her entire team underprepared from the opening tip. You can see it in how the Fever played. You can see it in their lack of organization. You can see it in their inability to execute basic offensive sets. You can see it in their defensive confusion. This team looked like they had not run a structured practice in weeks. They looked like they were playing together for the first time. And why? Because their head coach did not put in the work necessary to prepare them. Think about the best coaches in the world. Think about the coaches who win championships. They know everything about their opponents. They know the opposing players' tendencies. They know what they like to do in specific situations. They know how to attack weaknesses. They know how to exploit advantages. That's what separates great coaches from mediocre ones. That's what separates winners from losers. And Stephanie White clearly falls into the latter category. The Valkyries' head coach, Natalie Nas, showed up prepared. She had a game plan. She made adjustments. She exploited the Fever's weaknesses ruthlessly. She ran her offense with precision and purpose. Meanwhile, Stephanie White stood on the sideline with her arms crossed, watching her team completely unravel and did absolutely nothing to stop the bleeding. She had no answers. She had no adjustments. She had nothing because she was fundamentally unprepared. This is the person leading the franchise. This is the person responsible for developing Caitlyn Clark. This is the person who's supposed to be building a championship-caliber team, and she doesn't even know the opposing roster. It's beyond belief. It's beyond acceptable. It's genuinely disqualifying. Now let's shift our focus to Aaliyah Boston because her portion of the press conference was equally, if not more, infuriating. Boston spent the majority of the first half completely neutralizing herself. Think about this for a moment. She is the biggest, strongest, most physically dominant player on the court for the Indiana Fever. She has every physical advantage imaginable. She's taller than her defenders. She's stronger. She's more athletic. She should be absolutely unstoppable in the paint. And yet, what does she do? She spends the first 2 quarters floating aimlessly around the three-point line like she's playing in a pickup game at the park. Instead of using her physical advantage, instead of demanding the ball in the post where she can't be stopped, she's out on the perimeter refusing to engage in the one way she can dominate. It makes no sense. It's a complete waste of her abilities. It's like having a Lamborghini and deciding to drive it in 3rd gear on a residential street. You're not using the tool for what it was designed to do. And it's not just that she's floating around the three-point line. She's also committing some of the lowest basketball IQ fouls you will ever see in a professional game. Boston is in foul trouble, constant foul trouble, every single game. It doesn't matter what city she's in. It doesn't matter what team she's playing against. It doesn't matter what officiating crew is blowing the whistle. She is consistently finding herself in foul trouble because she fundamentally misunderstands how to play post-defense and post-offense. She waits until the defense is set. Then she lowers her shoulder. Then she bulldozes into a stationary defender. And then she acts completely shocked when the referee blows the whistle for an offensive charge. Like she doesn't understand the rules of basketball. So when the media asks her about the challenges the Valkyries presented and how they were defending her, does Aaliyah Boston take any accountability for her terrible footwork? Does she acknowledge her lack of discipline? Does she admit that she contributed to her own foul trouble? Absolutely not. Instead, what comes out of her mouth is excuse after excuse after excuse. She says, "I wasn't even able to get into a flow." She says, "It's super hard to understand how the refs are calling it." She says, "I don't think anyone's in legal position." And then, here's the real kicker, she says, "Shout out to the Valkyries. They did a great job selling it and the refs bought it." Are you kidding me, Aaliyah? Are you seriously sitting at that podium blaming the referees for your foul trouble? This is not a new problem. This is not something that just started happening this season. You've been in foul trouble your entire career. You've been getting called for offensive charges since you entered the league. And your response, your default response, is to blame the refs for falling for selling fouls? Here's the reality that Aaliyah Boston needs to understand. The referees are not the problem. The Valkyries are not the problem. You are the problem. You are the one making poor decisions. You are the one not establishing deep post position early in the shot clock. You are the one waiting until the defense is set before you make your move. You are the one lowering your shoulder and charging into defenders. You are committing these fouls. And instead of going into the film room, humbling yourself, and working on your drop step or your pivot foot or your footwork, you sit at that podium and you accuse the opposing team of flopping, and you accuse the referees of being fooled. That's not accountability. That's the exact opposite of accountability. That's a loser's mentality. That's the mindset of someone who refuses to grow, refuses to improve, and refuses to take responsibility for their own actions. And here's what's really important to understand. A player doesn't develop this kind of mentality in a vacuum. A player doesn't wake up one day and decide to be a master of excuse-making. A player learns this behavior. They learn it from somewhere. They learn it from their environment. They learn it from the people around them. Where does Aaliyah Boston learn to deflect blame so comfortably? Where does she learn to make excuses instead of making adjustments? She learns it from her head coach. She learns it from Stephanie White, who sits at that same podium and says, "I thought we got good looks when the possessions were objectively terrible." She learns it from a coach who says, "I don't know," when asked about fundamental tactical elements of the game. The loser's mentality, the excuse-making, the refusal to take accountability, it all filters down from the top. This is what toxic coaching looks like. This is what happens when a head coach refuses to hold herself accountable. Her players follow suit. And now you have an entire roster of players making excuses, pointing fingers, and refusing to look in the mirror. Boston is a generational talent. She could be so much better, but she's being poisoned by a coaching staff that enables this kind of behavior instead of demanding excellence and accountability. Let's talk about the coaching for a moment, because this is where the real story emerges. Natalie Nas, the head coach of the Golden State Valkyries, coached absolute circles around Stephanie White tonight. And I want to be very clear about what that means. This wasn't just a team that was more talented. This wasn't just a team that had better players. This was a coach who demonstrated superior basketball intelligence, superior preparation, and superior in-game management. Nas came into this game with a clear game plan. She understood the Fever's weaknesses. She recognized where they were vulnerable, and then she exploited those weaknesses ruthlessly and systematically throughout the entire game. Nas made brilliant mid-game adjustments. She saw what wasn't working for her team and she adjusted. She saw what was working and she doubled down. She was reactive. She was proactive. She was nimble. She was everything that a great coach is supposed to be. Meanwhile, what was Stephanie White doing on the sideline? She was standing there with her arms crossed. She was watching her team completely unravel. She was watching her defensive schemes get torn apart. She was watching her offensive sets fail miserably. And she did absolutely nothing to stop the bleeding. Where were the timeouts when the Fever were struggling? Where were the adjustments? Where was the halftime shift in strategy? Where was the attempt to counter what the Valkyries were doing? It wasn't there. White stood around like she was watching the game on television, not coaching it. And that's the fundamental difference between a good coach and a bad coach. A good coach is constantly problem-solving. A good coach is constantly thinking ahead. A good coach is constantly trying to put their team in a position to win. A bad coach waits and sees what happens and reacts passively. Think about the second half adjustments. The Fever needed to address what the Valkyries were doing offensively. The Valkyries had a clear offensive strategy that was working. Veronica Burton was playing isolation basketball. She was one-on-one. She was getting her looks. She was contributing, but what was White doing to stop it? She blitzed Burton exactly one time the entire game. Exactly one time. And guess what happened? It worked perfectly. It forced a turnover. It was effective. It solved the problem. So what did Stephanie White do after it worked? She never ran it again. That's not a coaching decision. That's incompetence. That's a coach who doesn't understand how to build on success. That's a coach who doesn't understand how to implement a strategy and commit to it. You find something that works and you do it again. You vary it slightly so it doesn't become predictable. But you use the tools that are effective. White found a tool that worked and then put it away like it was broken. It's mind-boggling. And this connects to everything else we've talked about. This is not a slump. This is not a rough patch. This is not a case of the Fever just having an off night. This is a fundamental failure of leadership. This is a fundamental failure of preparation. This is a fundamental failure of basketball intelligence. Stephanie White is not equipped to be the head coach of a professional basketball team at this level. She's not equipped to coach a championship-caliber roster. And most importantly, she's not equipped to coach a generational talent like Caitlyn Clark. You want to know the difference between Natalie Nas and Stephanie White? Nas came prepared. Nas had a plan. Nas executed her plan. Nas made adjustments when necessary. Nas showed up for her team. White came unprepared. White had no clear plan. White did not execute. White made no meaningful adjustments. White did not show up for her team. These are not subtle differences. These are massive, glaring, fundamental differences in coaching ability and professionalism. The Valkyries roster is talented, but they're not significantly more talented than the Fever. The difference tonight was coaching. The difference tonight was preparation. The difference tonight was a coach who understood her job and a coach who did not. And that gap in coaching quality is exactly why the Fever lost this game. That gap in coaching quality is exactly why the Fever have been struggling. That gap in coaching quality is exactly why this franchise is in serious trouble. If you want to see the best coaches in the world, they're not standing around with their arms crossed watching their team lose. They're engaged. They're scheming. They're adjusting. They're trying to solve problems. They're putting their team in position to win. Natalie Nas did all of that tonight. Stephanie White did none of it. And that's the real story of this game. But I have saved the absolute worst, the most infuriating, the most disqualifying moment of this entire press conference for this section. This is the moment that proves, without a shadow of a doubt, that Stephanie White is completely and utterly unqualified to coach a generational talent like Caitlyn Clark. This is the moment that should result in immediate action from the front office. This is the moment that reveals the fundamental incompetence at the heart of this coaching situation. A reporter asks Stephanie White a very simple, very standard basketball question. He asks if there are any similarities or different wrinkles in how teams are guarding Caitlyn Clark this year compared to last year. It's a softball question. It's not a gotcha. It's not a trick. It's not designed to embarrass the coach. It's a straightforward basketball question that any competent head coach should be able to answer in their sleep. It's an opportunity for a coach to talk about their star player's gravity, to talk about the defensive schemes being used against her, to talk about how she's evolving the game. But what does Stephanie White say? What comes out of her mouth? She says, I don't know. I don't know, those 3 words. That's all it took. That's all it took to prove that Stephanie White should not be coaching the Indiana Fever. Your entire offensive system, your entire franchise, your entire job security relies entirely on your ability to understand how defenses are attacking Caitlyn Clark. Your ability to counter those defensive schemes. Your ability to create offenses that exploit weaknesses in those schemes. That is your job. That is literally what you get paid to do. And your response to a basic question about how defenses are attacking your star player is, I don't know. Get her out of here. Pack up her office right now. How can you possibly prepare offensive sets if you don't know how defenses are attacking your best player? How can you free her up? How can you create space for her if you don't understand what the opposing teams are doing? How can you make adjustments if you don't know what's happening? You can't. You absolutely cannot. And that's why the Fever are struggling offensively. Think about the implications of that statement. Caitlyn Clark is being guarded 94 feet from the basket. She's getting violently blitzed on every single pick and roll. She's getting aggressively trapped in the corners. She's fighting for her life out there against multiple defenders every single possession. And her head coach says, I don't know when asked about defensive schemes. Her head coach has no framework for understanding how defenses are attacking her. Her head coach can't articulate what's being done to her on the court. This is not a moment of humility. This is not a coach admitting that they're still learning. This is a fundamental failure. This is a coach saying, essentially, I have not studied my star player. I have not prepared her for what teams are doing to her. I don't understand the tactical elements of the game. It's confession. It's an admission of incompetence on live television. And what did Caitlyn Clark have to say about any of this? What was her response to her head coach saying, I don't know about how defenses are attacking her? Nothing. She said nothing. She had nothing to say. And do you know why? Because she's probably heard this before. She's probably realized over the course of this season that her head coach is not going to give her the tactical support she needs. She's probably accepted that she's on her own out there, that she's going to have to figure it out herself, that her coaching staff is not equipped to help her. That's the real tragedy here. Caitlyn Clark is a generational talent. She's doing things on a basketball court that we've never seen before. She has abilities that are genuinely unique. And instead of having a coaching staff that's dedicated to maximizing her potential, to creating offenses specifically designed to get her in positions where she can thrive, she has a coaching staff that says, I don't know. Instead of having a head coach who studied every detail of how defenses attack her so she can provide tactical guidance and support, she has a head coach who admits publicly that she doesn't know. Do you understand what that means for the Fever's future? Do you understand what that means for Clark's career? Do you understand the gravity of this situation? Stephanie White is actively limiting Caitlyn Clark's development. She's actively preventing her from reaching her full potential. She's actively wasting prime years of a generational talent's career. And when confronted with this, when asked a basic question about her star player, she responds with, I don't know. This is fireable. This is absolutely, without question, no matter what else happens, fireable. The front office needs to understand this. This is not a coaching decision that can be debated. This is not a close call. This is a clear indication that the head coach of the Indiana Fever is not qualified to hold that position. And that situation needs to be addressed immediately. Now I want to zoom out and talk about what this all means for Caitlyn Clark, because, at the end of the day, this is Clark's story. This is about wasted potential. This is about a generational talent being failed by the people around her. Caitlyn Clark is fighting a war on 2 fronts right now. On one front, she's fighting the opposing defenses who want to physically destroy her. On the other front, she's fighting her own coaching staff, who are too incompetent to help her and too arrogant to take accountability for their own failures. Let's talk about what happened to Clark on the court last night. She was getting guarded 94 feet from the basement. That's not a defensive scheme that just happens naturally. That's a deliberate decision by the opposing coaching staff. That's a choice that the Valkyries made to take the ball out of Clark's hands as much as possible. And it worked. It was effective. It limited her ability to get into any kind of rhythm. It prevented her from operating the offense. It made her job exponentially harder. But here's the thing. That's basketball. That's what happens when you're the best player on your team. Defenses are going to target you. Defenses are going to make your life difficult. That's expected. That's normal. That's something every great player has to deal with. The question is whether your coaching staff is prepared to help you combat those defensive schemes. The question is whether your head coach has studied those schemes and has a plan to counteract them. Did Stephanie White have a plan? Did she have answers? Let's look at the evidence. She said, "I don't know," when asked about defensive schemes. So no, she did not have a plan. She did not have answers. She did not have tactical support to offer. What did she do instead? She put Caitlyn Clark out there on an island and let her fend for herself. She watched her fight for her life against 3 defenders. She watched her get trapped. She watched her get blitzed. And she did nothing to help. Did she run a double drag screen to create space? Did she run staggered off ball screens to free Clark up? Did she run elevator doors or any other advanced offensive set? No, she did nothing. She had no answers. She had no plan. She had nothing because she hadn't done the work necessary to prepare for this game. She hadn't studied how defenses were attacking Clark. She hadn't prepared specific offensive sets to counter those attacks. She was just winging it out there. Compare that to how the Valkyries operated on offense. They had a clear plan. They knew what they wanted to do. They executed their game plan. They made adjustments when necessary. They were a coached team. They were a prepared team. The Fever, by contrast, looked like a team that had never run a practice together. They looked confused. They looked lost. They looked unprepared. And that's a direct reflection of their head coach. But here's where it gets even worse. While Stephanie White was doing nothing for Caitlyn Clark on offense, she was also doing nothing to stop the Valkyries on the other end of the floor. She let Veronica Burton play isolation basketball for the entire night. For the second game in a row, Burton was dominating against the Fever's defense. And what did White do? She blitzed Burton exactly one time, and it worked. It forced a turnover. It solved the problem. So what did she do after that? What's the logical next step? You found a successful defensive scheme, so you implement it again. You use it repeatedly. You vary it slightly to keep the opposing offense from adjusting to it, but you use the tools that work. Stephanie White did not do that. Instead, she never ran the blitz again. She abandoned the one defensive scheme that was actually effective. It's incomprehensible. It's inexplicable. It's the kind of coaching decision that would get you fired in any serious organization. The truth is Caitlyn Clark is carrying a burden that no player should have to carry. She's trying to win a basketball game against not just one opponent, but 2 opponents. She's trying to outsmart and out-execute the Golden State Valkyries and their coaching staff. At the same time, she's trying to navigate a game without proper tactical support from her own coaching staff. She's trying to win despite her own team being unprepared and disorganized. Think about how much harder her job is because of the coaching. Think about how much more difficult it is to be great when your coaching staff is not putting you in positions to succeed. Think about how much mental energy she has to expend just trying to figure out what offensive set she's supposed to be running because her coaches haven't clearly communicated it. All of that is wasted energy. All of that is energy that could be going toward executing at an elite level. And the front office is allowing this to happen. They're allowing their generational talent to be failed by a coaching staff that is fundamentally unqualified. They're allowing prime years of Clark's career to be wasted on a coach who says, "I don't know," when asked about basic tactical elements. They're allowing the greatest offensive prospect this league has ever seen to be limited by poor coaching. That's negligence. That's malpractice. That's a failure of organizational leadership. This Stephanie White experiment is completely cooked. It's over. The front office needs to intervene immediately before they waste another prime year of the greatest offensive prospect this league has ever seen. Caitlyn Clark did not sign up to be limited by incompetent coaching. The fans did not pay their money to watch a generational talent be failed by poor leadership. And the Indiana Fever franchise did not trade for and invest in Clark just to squander her potential. I want every single one of you watching this video to get down in the comments right now. Do not hold back. What did you think about this embarrassing press conference? Are you as furious as I am about Aaliyah Boston blaming the referees for foul trouble that's a direct result of her own decision-making? Are you disgusted by Stephanie White saying, "I don't know," when asked about how defenses are attacking Caitlyn Clark? Are you tired of watching excuses instead of seeing accountability? Sound off in the comments below. Make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications because we are going to keep holding this franchise accountable every single day. This is about excellence. This is about demanding better. This is about protecting a generational talent. And that conversation starts with you.